have the money, but the library might. So I'm gonna request manga for them to purchase. Let's see what we get. Hey, I'm Lucas and welcome to the channel. So here's what we're gonna do. My library allows 5 requests per month. So I'm gonna quickly summarize why I requested these specific manga, and we're gonna see if they accept or reject them. The ones that do get approved, I'll borrow. If they get rejected, I'll cry. The month I requested this in was in April 2025. It's January 2026 now. So the manga I went with were either manga that were on my bookstore wish list or ones I learned about from the internet because I don't have IRL friends. Hey, don't end the sentence there. That read manga. The first one we're going with is Cosmos by Ryuhei Tamura. He's a mangaka that made Beelzebub and used to be in Shonen Jump, but now he makes this manga and another one at the same time. It's a monthly series, so the chapters are longer. The genre is comedy, drama, science fiction. According to Gigaka and Joey from the Next Manga Awards, it did give them Men in Black vibes. The premise is basically this. A guy can smell lies, and then crazy shit happens. I also like the cover of the first volume. I think the woman on there looks kind of intimidating but cool, if you get what I mean. Next up would be Even Though We're Adults. It's a Yuri drama series that I first heard about from a YouTuber who bought the manga in a store. I think it was Mangatama. This one's kind of interesting because it has a live action adaptation on Hulu Japan. Now Yuri at the time isn't a genre I read a lot of. I've read Even Though We're Adults. I watched Bloom Into You. But the premise is basically this. A teacher meets a woman on a night out. They fall for each other. But the twist is that the woman she falls for is married to a man. This manga runs in Josei Magazine Kiss, and the mangaka Takako Shimura has multiple series that have lasted close to a decade. Third up, I wanted a classic. So who better to put than Osamu Tezuka and his manga Dororo. I heard about this series first via its newish anime adaptation and watched like 10 episodes when Gigak had a legal stream of it. It seemed really cool. I never ended up watching the rest of it on my own, but then I thought, it'd be pretty cool to just read a manga from the 60s and see how it holds up. From what I remember, the premise is basically that a baby is cursed because of his father's greed and is cast away in a river like he's Moses, but with no body parts, I think? That might be the worst explanation so far. It's an action and it's also dark and historical fantasy. Fourth request is Medalist, and here's a common theme. Next Manga Awards, Gigak. The story is basically a kid wanting to figure skate, but she's at an age that is considered too old to start, and an instructor who had the same problem when he was a kid. It's a sports manga, so let's go. It's also a drama, so that's cool too. I'm pretty surprised it's not at my library already because I think it's pretty popular. Finally, pick 5 is Young Ladies Don't Play Fighting Games. I found about this via Eyepatch Wolf on Blue Sky, and it seemed pretty cool. It has an anime and live action show coming out as well. It's a comedy drama and Yuri coded. Without trying too hard to explain it, it's basically a rich, classy girl at an all-girls academy, beloved by everyone, but in reality, she's a toxic gamer. The story follows this one student who finds out about it, and I guess we find out what happens from there. With these 5 requests, how many got accepted? Even Though We're Adults got the budgetary constraints straight off the rip. Cosmos, on the other hand, did not, even though Cosmos costs more as a single takoban. The other 3 I had to wait a couple days for. Did I get any of them? No, all 3 were rejected for budgetary constraints. Even Medalist! Now with this being many months later, I do know why some of these may have gotten rejected for budgetary constraints. When I recommended a manga, I was just recommending the first volume. But in reality, when you do recommend it, you're technically recommending the whole series. If volume 1 gets accepted, the library will likely buy the subsequent volumes as well. So that's why it can get rejected for budgetary constraints, because a long series is going to cost a lot of money over time. That's probably why 3 of the series got rejected and the newer series got accepted. Dororo, I don't know. Here's the results visually, and yeah, not good, 1 for 5. So what do I do next? Because that's the video. I just reviewed Cosmos and we're done. That's kind of lame just having 1 accepted. So I thought I requested these at the end of April. Maybe their budget was low towards the end of the month. So let's request 5 more at the beginning of May. Medalist again. I had to think strategically though to get these accepted. So next up, I decided to request a manga that has an anime. Then I realized I don't really want to read Bocchi the Rock's manga. However, Bocchi the Rock has a side story. Side story featuring Kekuri Hiroi's heavy drinking diary. Some people say she's the best character in the show, Others may say she's degenerate, a bum, a lowlife, a disaster, but surely her life isn't like that. Right? Well, we're gonna find out if this manga gets accepted. At the time, there was one volume out, so maybe that'd be more likely to get accepted too. Next up, I chose Knights of the Zodiac Saint Seiya, but with an asterisk, the ebook. At my library, there's currently volume 6 and 22 to 28 available physically. However, some of the physical volumes aren't in print at the moment. My thought is, get the ebook. Why not? It's cheaper. It's not that expensive, right? If you don't know what Saint Seiya is, it's a legendary series that was part of Jump's golden age that featured Dragon Ball, City Hunter, Fist of the North Star, and several others. I don't really have much to say other than it relates with Greek gods and fighting. Never checked out the anime at all, but I would like to read it one day, and I guess I could read it on the Shonen Jump app. Next up is Red River 3-in-1 edition. 3-in-1 basically means 3 volumes in 1 book. Now, what is Red River? It's an actual shoujo series for one. It's a drama supernatural, and the premise is that it follows a Japanese teenager who somehow time travels to ancient Hattusa, where the queen wants to use her as a sacrifice and make sure all the princes in the land except her son are killed. However, she keeps escaping and begins to fall in love with some other prince. It seems like a fun series, and it originally came out in the early 90s, but this 3-in-1 edition came out quite recently. Finally, I chose another manga that brings more bang for your buck, and that's the Fable Omnibus, volumes 1 and 2 included. I heard about this series via its anime, which apparently didn't have the best animation. However, this series has a lot of fans and it's praised quite highly. If you look at the volume cover, it seems like a cool action story, but in reality, it's about a hitman who gets told to live a normal life in a small town outside of Osaka for a year. However, there are Yakuza in the town who allow him to live there. Can he really live a normal life? And what shenanigans will go on? This series is also popular as it has multiple manga sequels. At the end of the day though, I thought this was the least expected to be approved out of the 5. It was the first one accepted. This is the manga where I learned that they buy the whole series because when this one became available at the library, soon later, several books went on order. The other results? Red River rejected for budgetary constraints. It's cheaper than Fable, so I don't understand that one. Knights of the Zodiac got rejected for the same reason, which I presume is because buying all the ebooks was too much, so that was something I didn't realize at the time. Bocchi's side story would have been accepted, but apparently the suppliers can no longer obtain the book. Lastly, Medalist remained under review well into June. 2 books in 2 months isn't a satisfying result, so I decided to do 1 more month because the longer Medalist was under review, the more I expected it to be rejected. So let's do June. My final set of requests, I needed to be smart. So I chose a new series called Tsumiki Ogami's Not So Ordinary Life. It was featured on the next manga awards like Cosmos and Medalist. It got licensed by Viz recently, and I read the first 3 chapters on their app, and I really liked it. It follows a guy who moves to a school with mythfolk who are humanoid creatures of things like werewolves, vampires, medusas, etc. This awkward guy who's full on human meets Tsumiki, who's a werewolf, and they become friends, and we see their adventures. My first impressions of it was that it gave me a warm and fuzzy feeling in my belly. It's very wholesome, and Tsumiki is adorable, and I wanted to read more. I also saw comments on a Reddit thread on a recent chapter that said, "I'm going to fucking die." Usually new licenses by Viz get approved because I originally wanted to request Rai 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 and the Bugle Call, but they were already there. Next up is Stardust Family. I heard about this one via the Omnibus Collector where he talks about every manga that comes out, and this one seemed interesting. For one, the story just ends in 1 book as it contains the 2 volumes, and basically this is the premise. Japan's birth rate is declining. So how do they fix it? Require families to be approved to have children. Regardless, who better to test whether a parent is worthy than a child themselves? The story follows the kid on the front cover where the new family he tests seems different than what he has seen before. The premise intrigued me, and this being done in 1 book made it seem like a good option to request. Third up is Blue Giant Omnibus 3-4. I previously talked about Blue Giant in this video, but it's basically a high school saxophone player's journey to becoming the best jazz musician in the world. I enjoyed the first omnibus, so I was intrigued to see where the story was heading. Unfortunately, my library didn't have this omnibus, and I thought, why? And the reason seemed to be because it's not available physically in Canada, at least. It's licensed by 7 Seas Entertainment, so I don't know what's up with that because the other omnibuses before and after this volume is available. However, I thought, it, let's see what happens. Fourth up is Snow Angel. No, not the Renee Rapp album. That's already there. along with this film that nobody likes. It's a shoujo from Viz, and I was drawn to it by the cover art as it looks quite beautiful. The story, from what I understand, is that this blondie on the front cover can't find a job and is a caregiver to her grandpa. She lives in a household where her grandma's constant criticism drowns her, and she wants to escape. One day, her childhood friend shows up and changes her life. Quite convenient, but we'll see if it gets accepted. Finally, I chose Gigantomachia, and I only chose this because it's by Kentaro Miura, rest in peace. He's the creator of Berserk, and I thought it'd be pretty nice to have a work of his in the library. I don't really care what it's about, I just wanted the manga there. However, I did first hear about it when I went on Google one day and wanted to see what wrestling anime there were. This manga was on there, which was weird because it doesn't look like a wrestling manga to me. One other thing I tried to do to get this over the line was that in the notes section, I wrote that this was the creator of Berserk. So, what got accepted? Not medalists, I can tell you that. However, the library was kind to me in June. As first, Sumiki got approved. No surprise there. But now we have 3, so I'm satisfied. However, Snow Angel soon got approved too, and so did Blue Giant. Gigantomachia followed, and by the end of the month, Stardust Family got approved too. 5 for 5, let's go. A perfect month, if we ignore Melis, because that was May. That means we have 7 manga to read, so I'm doing more than I expected. Many months later, I have read at least 1 volume of each of these series, so let me give some quick thoughts on it because this video is getting long. Cosmos, wow. This was incredible. I love this. The first volume arrived and yeah, it gets a thumbs up for me. 100%. Read it, please. The main character Kaide can smell lies and crazy shit does indeed happen. Crazy things like aliens immigrating to Earth, disguising themselves as humans, insurance investigators who basically get them visas to Earth, find the ones that do illegal stuff or haven't paid them back. Rin, who is the character on the front cover, is one of those investigators, and she's badass. I think Ruhei Tamura loves wrestling because I saw her do a Hurricanrana and a German suplex on these fools. The art is fantastic and it emphasizes the big moments in each of the volumes I've read, because I've read 2. He does very well to end volumes, as the second one especially made me tear up. So far it does seem like an episodic series, but maybe there will be an overarching story as the manga goes on. The only thing I could consider as overarching is a mystery that involves Rin, but I won't say too much. Overall, outside of investigating aliens and the subtext of immigration, the story seems to be about Kaide trying to understand people better. That's because in the first chapter, which is an incredible first chapter, he can't really build great relationships with people because he can always tell who's lying. I'm still waiting for volumes 3 and 4, but I'm for sure going to continue this. The Fable Omnibus volume 1 to 2 is next, and I was expecting a thrilling action series, but instead I got a Yakuza slice of life. Maybe that's not entirely true as shit does go down, but I'd say it is true 75% of the time. The story follows this guy who doesn't really have a name, but we call him Fable, and he's told to live a normal life after a hitman job is done. He moves to this town, gets a job, meets new people, and buys a pet bird. As a main character, he's as weird as they come, as he changes how he acts depending on the situation. It's like he's programmed like a robot. However, it's funny to see him try and live a normal life. One example is when he has to pretend to let people beat him up so he doesn't blow his cover. The drawings for the character are more realistic compared to most of the manga, which makes it stand out, and the paneling is kind of basic. Maybe that's the point of it, as it's mostly just rectangles and squares. Nothing really pops out until there are some double spreads. So far I did read up to the second omnibus, which is the end of volume 4, but my expectations haven't been lived up to yet because, you know, this is a highly rated series and it only starts to get kind of crazy towards the end of the second omnibus, I think. I've not continued past it as so far I prefer to read other things at the moment, but maybe I'll get to it in the future. Third up, Snow Angel, and this blondie on the front is named Muku, and yeah, her life sucks. It begins with her not getting a job. We learn that her father died in the past and was taken in by her grandparents, and now she's her grandpa's caregiver, along with her mom and grandma. She also helps a guy on a train, and we later learn that they're childhood friends. It's kind of obvious based on the cover. The premise mentioned Muku suffocating or drowning in her household and needing to escape. I think visually, the mangaka displays this tremendously. Granted, I think the decision she makes at the end of the chapter that changes the course of the story is kind of ridiculous or crazy, but to advance the plot probably is needed. Overall, after the first chapter, I needed a break. So much happened so fast. And I know chapter 1s have to have a lot packed in to get people hooked into the series, but damn, there was a lot. At the time of reading this, I was not too well versed on shoujo, as the only one I read at the time was The Rose of Versailles. I didn't finish it, but I also watched some anime that were shoujo with mixed opinions. Regardless, I still enjoyed it, and I'll give volume 2 a chance as it just arrived from the library. Tsumiki Ogami's Not So Ordinary Life, definitely not so ordinary, but it is definitely a fantastic series. I've read the first 3 volumes. Volumes 4 and 5 will be coming eventually. And yeah, if you've had a tough day and you want to read a chapter of manga, read this. It'll make you feel a bit better. The characters in this, especially the humanoid, are well thought out and crafted. There's this vampire guy who has all the ladies fall in love with him, and he sucks their blood so he doesn't get hungry. Essentially, of course. But all he really wants is to have friends, and not people who obsess over his looks. Tsumiki is a fun and cute character, and it's always a good time whenever she's on the page. The main character we follow, Yutaka, begins as an introverted, awkward character, but thanks to Tsumiki and pushing himself, he grows as a person and overcomes things from his past and makes new friends. I'll for sure continue reading this. Giganta Maxia is a short work with it only being 1 volume, and it's of course by the legendary Kentaro Miura. It definitely feels like Berserk, but in like an alternate universe far into the future, as it's like 100 million years in the future. You get great art, fantastic action, and the story is good enough. It's been a while since I've read it and I didn't take notes on it, but it feels like a story that if it gets fleshed out, it could be pretty good. But unfortunately, that will never happen. If you're expecting Berserk 2, you're not going to get anything close to what the story of Berserk is. However, I think there's some interesting world building. The world is filled with humans, demi-humans, and massive creatures. If you enjoyed Berserk, then it's definitely worth reading as there's something to appreciate here. Plus, there are German suplexes, so it does count as a wrestling manga in my books. Blue Giant Omnibus 3-4. It's January 2026. This was requested over a half a year ago, and it still hasn't arrived. I'm guessing 7C still hasn't done a reprint for this volume. If I want more Blue Giant, I guess I should watch the movie. Finally, Stardust Family. I'm not going to say too much about it because I think this is worth your time reading and going into this mostly blind. While the logic of Japan fixing their birth rate issues by making it harder to have children kind of seems illogical, the story and mysteries that are presented in this manga have me hooked the entire time. Like I said, I don't want to say too much because it's just 1 book, but all I'll say is that everything you see isn't always the reality. The end is beautiful. I can't remember if I teared up or not, but yeah, it made me feel things. So if I were to rank these manga, nothing was bad. At worst, a story was okay. And okay doesn't mean bad or mid. If I were to rank these, number 1, Cosmos, easy. Number 2, Stardust Family. Number 3, Tsumiki. I will read that for the rest of my life. There can be 200 chapters, 500 chapters, 1,000 chapters, 2,000 chapters. It can be the next Golgi 51 or whatever that thing is called. I will read it for the rest of my life. Number 4 would be Snow Angel. I have that ahead of Fable. And then Giganta Maxia would be at the bottom, but it's still ahead of Blue Giant because Blue Giant is one I haven't read. And maybe I'll never be able to read it.